fences made of the ochage.
So you can make it like a
a
natural
living
fence?
fence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
it'd
you
be
can
spiky,
Yep. It's
like nature's barbed wire.
it's
Yeah,
what they used before
yeah.
barbed wire existed, and
So
once
we
they
have
did,
like a hedge of
Yes.
Osage orange?
yes.
Yeah, but I guess I've never seen one, but I hear that if you plant them on like 6-inch or 1-foot centers, as the stems grow, they all self-graft. So it basically is just like a solid wall of actual like fused wood.
Oh, wow.
Pretty
So it actually fuses together.
Yeah, they just graft, like they touch each other and self-graft, and then just it's a straight wall of wood.
The closest collection site. I have literally been to Missouri to try to collect these.
Wow.
If I could get one nearby, that'd be great.
I mean, I've only seen a handful, and that one's just like, I remember one year I was like, what the hell is that? Like grapefruits or something? You know, like it's so big. I mean, it's almost as tall as this catalpa.
They're huge. They're huge.
It's huge.
In St. Louis, where I went, they have full-grown specimens.
Yeah, and they smell amazing. Okay. Okay, cool. We'll head up to the nursery spot, and then yeah, we can leave the top off. Actually, I want me to air these out. I got to clean the seeds on those. They're so funky. These are actually, yeah, kind of. It's also a relative of mulberries, and so you can use it as a rootstock for che. It's the main rootstock people use for che.
Are they any good to eat at all?
Those?
Yeah.
No. They smell wonderful.
I want a living fence. Where do we have?
Che is like a little, it's a mulberry relative. I think it's Maclura tricuspidata, but yeah. Maclura, yeah. Yeah, so anyway, I guess we'll just go up there and we'll do introductions real quick. We don't have to spend too much time on it because I know you guys have probably already done that. And this is Black Creek Farm and Nursery, and we've been here for 9 years.
9.
And we started as a nursery only a little bit, and we were growing vegetables. So we did organic vegetables up to like 15 acres for a few years. Quite, yeah, it was a lot, a lot of veggies. And I've been growing the nursery at the same time and trying to now transition a little bit more towards doing more integrating perennials and annuals at a larger scale. So up here, we'll get into a little bit of the details on the nursery, and then we can talk about like the agroforestry stuff. But I just wanted to go around real quick. I'm not going to remember the names, but just say your name and then maybe just like a sentence or two about, you know, what you're trying to learn most, or what you're doing right now. Are you farming, gardening? What's the application? Just because I'll talk in whatever direction, but I want it to be useful for everybody. Let's start over here.
Kathy Wong, I'm completely new. I have no experience whatsoever. I want to learn everything.
Okay.
My name is David, Saratoga Springs, New York. We're doing small-scale permaculture in suburbia, looking to expand into more property with agroforestry and edible perennials for the future.
Cool.
My wife.
And this is my guy, I'm Brenda, and I am also doing permaculture. I tend to gravitate towards the nurturing the young seedlings and baby animals too, and I love getting lost in the learning about these things.
Easy to do.
Yeah.
I'm Jenna, and we're looking at doing permaculture and low input gardening, both for personal and financial production.
I'm George. I'm with Jenna. Just for me, it's more of the educational piece and just collaborating with one another and just getting a better understanding of permaculture and agroforestry.
I'm Paz. I'm wanting to grow into a farm that we recently got, but for now probably just still some lots of learning, minor gardening, etc.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Lex. I'm a farmer just outside of Boston.
Okay.
Work at a edible and native landscaping company. Just trying to expand my knowledge, my skill set.
Cool.
Chris is currently doing small scale vegetable gardening, farming, and yeah, I really want to learn. I want to go into tree crops, perennial crops just as soon as I can.
Right on.
And I want to make that happen fast. So learning whatever I can about productive tree crops that I can take home and replicate and help make a plan.
Right on.
I'm Ben. I work in agroforestry in New York. Do mostly on farms in Cobblestone, New York, and then do some contracting on the side. I'd love to learn more about your bed prep and whatever you want to tell us.
I actually paused mid-bed prep on a new area just so that you guys could all see it, so that'll be cool.
I'm Rich. I work in the Albany area. I teach and I do consulting work primarily around community land use is the best way to say what I do. So gardens, orchards, landscapes, things like that. So looking to learn wherever I can go, you know.
Eric, thanks for having us.
Yeah, good to see you.
My name is Naomi, and I am looking to start a permaculture agroforestry generational forever farm.
Sweet.
And I'm David, and I want to preserve sites like this.
Right.
Cool. All right, so it sounds like nursery stuff is pretty relevant to everyone, and that's where we are. So we'll just talk about that for a few minutes. I'll just give a basic intro to how the nursery functions from a kind of high level, and then how I made this garden. So this the farm is...
Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah.
How long you've been here, what that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
What
so...
inspired you too, man, to take on this kind of crazy work?
Oh, that's a tough question. But it does have a pretty definitive, well, I don't know. It has a beginning of some kind, but what has really a beginning? I mean, I went to Mexico when I was, I don't know, like 18 or something like that. And I stayed for a summer with a Zapotec family, and they were doing what I later understood to be the Milpa agroforestry system. And I didn't really know anything at the time. I just was doing whatever they said. And it was later that I kind of started to realize what was happening, and it was all the permaculture stuff, you know, like the multi-strata, successional, four-dimensional farming of it was like a 50-year crop rotation, you know. So they started with a field that had corn, beans, and squash, but they also planted in, you know, coffee and cacao and avocado and all this crazy stuff, the whole thing. But it all had an arc of succession to it. So after a few years, you weren't growing the corn much anymore, but then the bananas took over, and then the next canopy, and then the next one, and then the next one, until you'd be in, you know, these huge multi-strata forests that I didn't know were anthropogenic at the time. You know, I was just walking through it. I had no idea that was that was their agriculture, because it looked and felt so natural, and yet it was so productive. And so I saw that, and then I went to School for Natural Resources, to grad school, undergrad biology, grad school. I went and worked with indigenous people in a different context, but learning, again, about indigenous people's understanding of ecology and how scientific ecology can, you know, work with that, and they can partner instead of be at odds. So, and then right at the end of that education, I've told this story a bunch of times, and it's actually true. It's no embellishments whatsoever. I was in the library. I just finished my thesis, a 200-page thesis, and I had never heard of permaculture up until this point. And I was just kind of like, wow, I'm done. What am I doing in the library anymore? I'm going to go somewhere. And then a ray of light came through this staircase, and it hit this book, and I was like, what's that book? Permaculture Designer's Manual. And I was like, that's a cool picture. Awesome. Took it out, and I was like, this is interesting. And then I read that whole book, and I was like, holy shit. How did no one mention this to me in 8 years of education? You know, it's crazy.
What year was that?
2011. Yeah. So, yeah, that's how I like found out about permaculture, and then came back home from Canada and took a course, and yeah, so that's when it started. I had been farming before that in Canada during grad school, learning about agriculture systems there, that kind of thing. But yeah, like probably everybody here, realizing how in trouble we are as a species, as a planet, and wanting not to just think about it and talk about it, but like help understand, help build the new agriculture systems that can feed us while doing, you know, services for us and services for the rest of the world. So yeah, and then we just happened upon this opportunity before it even went on the market, and we were able to do it. So that's how we got here. And when we got it, the neighbors still operate Sorbello's greenhouses, and this was all just a lawn. So these I didn't plant these big ones there. They were there. But everything else was a lawn, so I just started planting stuff right away.
What year did you get it?
Made 2015. Okay. Made tons and tons of mistakes. I think, like a lot of people that have gone through this process, if you were to start from ground zero a second time, you could get back to this in no time flat. You know, it's amazing how quick things can happen, how fast things can grow once you know how to direct your energies a little bit. Because that's the main thing, is how do you use your own energy and time effectively. So like this area, I've planted so many trees in here and they just die, and you know, you find out that there's weird stuff in the soil. There's some you know, some salting, and then I found out that they had actually just stripped all the topsoil off of here. So, you know, all kinds of things like that slow you down in the beginning. But so we'll jump into something specific. This area here was a foundation for a greenhouse that they had, and what I did when I wanted to start the nursery in this space was, and this is the bed prep that I'll show you in a little bit. Now I have a machine, and it's really nice because it takes less energy for me to make new beds than it does to like brush my teeth. But this one, and up until that point that I had the machine, everything was by hand. So this was just like that, you know, kind of just had been mowed forever. And it's because the greenhouse broke down like 30 years ago or something. So all I did was I dug where the beds were gonna go. I dug really deep with a shovel and a broad fork to loosen all the soil. And then where the walkways were gonna go, I just dug all the way down 9-10 inches and put all that soil on the beds. Every one, you know, this one or that one went there, this one went there. And so it looks a little bit chaotic, but there's actually, the layout's just dead simple. It's like, you know, 30-inch beds and 18-inch walkways. And the walkways, I just dig down until it gets really hard and tight and rocky. And then I fill the walkways with a core of wood chips, you know, packed. If it's gonna be 9 inches, you put like 12 and then it breaks down. And so what that does, I've never irrigated in here because you just have a rotting core of wood chips on either side of every bed, and there's just never gonna be a lack of moisture. They're always giving off nutrients. You know, I have to top that up every 2 years, so that's my input here. We can talk later about systems where I'm very focused on trying to get away from having to import mulch and basically grow your mulch right next to your plants, which I think is really the best way to do it. But for here, this is really like a production bed system. I'm not really trying to grow anything in here permanently. So the stuff spends 1 or 2, sometimes 3 years in here, but mostly 2. And so it looks like perennial no-till, but it's actually pretty intensive. Just harvesting is pretty deep tillage, right? Like you go in with a nursery spade, you know, 12, 13, 16 inches deep, and you're not like rototilling it, but just the action of harvesting is like a pretty deep tillage. But then, yeah, so within those beds, actually, starting right here to down there, this is all seed from Buzz. These are all those chestnuts. And this is what, what I can get 1 year on,
May or something, right? April, May.
yeah.
What's that behind you?
These are catalpa. Catalpa, so in the vein of talking about things that I would do differently, I think, a lot of us, you just want to plant the stuff that you want to harvest, right? You start with the fruit trees, the nut trees, and a lot of the time that's great. Planting just fast-growing biomass trees is really worth the time. And if I was going to redo it, I would plant 2 of these for every fruit tree that I plant. So just huge amounts of biomass. You can cut them back. Catalpa in particular is a low-level nitrogen fixer, but just amazing amounts of growth. And they really the more plants you have growing that are managed well, they invigorate the soil. If you just let the plant grow and shade everything out, then yeah, it can cause some problems. But you can plant things so dense, and as long as you're pruning them and managing them, you get better growth for it.
Corn in the hickory, is that what that is?
Yeah.
What's this crazy tall thing here?
All right, so this is a mystery. The tree, not the species, this is just an English walnut or a Persian walnut. But so there's a whole bunch of other ones in here. There's this one, and then there's a whole bed of them over there. All the same seed, planted the same way. This guy grew this last year, and then this year. I have no idea why. There's no explanation whatsoever. This is another one right next to it. But like, to me, that one is just always a reminder of like, yeah, if we could figure out how to help plants do that every year, we wouldn't be talking about nuts as like 10 or 20 years towards harvest, So I don't know what happened, but it's really tough because
Do you know the seed source?
I do.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, this whole bed over there, same exact seed source.
Further down to the left, though.
But those are 2 years,
Right.
Or 3 years rather.
A year ahead of this one.
Yeah, those are a year ahead of this one.
Astounding, isn't it?
Yeah, certain things you can't really understand. So yeah, most of this stuff is just direct seeded. Like,
is it okay if people come in and walk around?
yeah, totally. Just walk. You can see the lines of where to walk.
This is real important to understand.
I do want to make one thing very clear, which is when I moved here, I tried to do planting like this, and it didn't work at all for the first few years. I would plant nuts into the ground, and every single nut would be taken by mice, squirrels, chipmunks. Even one time I had a bed wiped out by a snapping turtle. It was crazy. Like, and then deer, of course. And I have to give credit to the cats. We got 2 cats, and one cat is just a natural mouser. And I don't think that's the only reason that it works now, but I think it's a huge factor. I also think that there's just amount of like, when the soil gets to the right place and the plants grow vigorously, and for a few years when I planted nuts in here, and for the veggie growers among you, great pattern is just do your regular garlic planting, 3-row garlic, whatever, and then just put 2 rows of nuts in between. The garlic really does seem to hide the nuts from the rodents, and the timing is perfect. The garlic comes out, and then the trees' canopies pop, and they just take over the space, and there's never not something growing in that space. It doesn't take anything from the garlic.
So this stuff here, you dig these and plant them around your property, or you sell them to other people?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're just, we're having a late fall here, so I just am starting to dig like now. I just have everything set up, so we're gonna dig everything in the next week. The persimmons, they just lost their leaves, but those haven't. So I like to dig everything after they lose their leaves, ideally, because that way they're not transpiring and they're very easy to, they're just resilient at that point. They're in dormancy.
How do you track provenance? As
see no tags.
Yeah, there are in these here. There are
There are tags. Oh,
there are
sweet.
some tags.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're just hidden there. We can't see them.
Yeah.
How much of it is in here, as opposed to written down?
Too much.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah, definitely too much.
You'll quit doing that soon.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely getting. Those are second year. Yeah. No, these are varieties from Buzz. This is the first time Buzz hooked me up with a crazy amount of chestnuts. So I planted these out. They're all
kinds of provenance here. There's
yeah,
many different.
yeah. You can see the blocks how they're different in growth
It
patterns.
looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8, 9, 10, 11, 12,
Yeah.
13 different, at least.
Yeah.
Different batches from different trees. You see the leaf shape, color, relative size.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the way the leaves are structured as far as the look. There's a lot of American in that. These are a lot of Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But all ones that are known to be good.
they all came
Producers?
from known mother trees, and that's what I'm saying. Where's the, you got tags in there somewhere?
I do. I do.
Yeah.
So how long until these get like overcrowded? Like will these be dug up next year or the year after?
From here to here is cases, but I like this this model too. Like some of the slower growing trees, like pawpaws, these are KSU seed, and I just leave them in the ground 2 years, and then you get really nice size, and I don't have to feel like stingy about selling plants that are 4 inches tall, because these things don't germinate very easily. Or I stratify the seed cold, and then I warm it up in like March in the greenhouse, just under the benches, keeping it moist, and then plant it out. And even then, I only get it to germinate in July. It just sits there. So the only reason this garden works like this is because I haven't really let any weeds go to seed for years. So I will mulch everything, and I only have to go through this place and weed once or twice in the season and just throw some more mulch on it and I'm good. But for the first few years, that was harsh. That's Western sand cherry. Yeah, really cool. We don't have a lot of cherry species that we can grow here. My focus is on plants that you can just plant and then actually get fruit, as opposed to the fancy, apricots, cool, it's great. You can see the apricot leaves all year and never eat a single apricot.
This year was ridiculous in Vermont.
You're the luckiest guy.
Freaking loaded. First time in my life.
Yeah, and that also speaks to like the importance of specific location. I mean, like we have such high plum cuculio pressure here. Every single plum, and I got 20 big fruiting plums or flowering plums. I've never eaten one because every year, every single plum doesn't have 2 or 3 oviposition. It's got 15 to 20 to 30 on every single one. So we'll see. Someday maybe the soil life will take care of it, but so far not. Yes, they are a shoe. Yeah, they're awesome. They just fruit. But you do have to prune the heck out of them. I don't, I've said I've had a lot of different opinions about pruning over the years. I've always pruned a little bit, but now I just prune like a maniac. I think it's just, I have more plant material and I don't feel as worried, precious about everything. But everything has a pruning cycle and it needs to be rejuvenated.
So I might have had apricots one time.
Yeah.
Free mulch.
Yeah, yeah.
I could kill you for that.
Yeah. Well, it ripened a few and now it's kind of stalled, and I'm worried that these aren't. They're gonna be fine. Yeah. Yeah, I do. It's pretty privileged that we can grow those guys. Yeah. Yeah, that's in its 4th year, so doing pretty well. Rosa Yanka. That's one of the hybrid Asian Americans. And these are really key, like, American persimmons, Rossesyanka. Do I? Oh, I think so. Can I spell it? I haven't yet, but if I actually end up, we'll go to the persimmon orchard. I've grafted a bunch of this.
So, can you grow Nikita's gift here too? Will it ripen?
Yeah, I think so. A friend of mine has had some success.
Grocery store either.
American persimmons are hard to market. Maybe they never will be really marketed very easily because the fresh fruit is just too fragile, and it ripens staggered. But this, they kind of ripen more at one time, and you could actually pick them off the tree and ripen them after. So it's got higher potential for actually being a commercial thing. This is that river that was cut to the ground. Amorpha. Amorpha fruticosa. Yeah. That tree is 3 years old. Yeah. Yeah. It's China. Yeah.
They started those from seed and they go nuts.
Yeah. They're hard to do from seed. So just the flow, this is my healing in spot. This is like a little sweet corn patch for the summer. And then I put all the mulch to the side, cover it with sawdust, and then as I start to dig everything, I just heal it all into here in rows. And all the stuff gets like, the orders get packed in there. So it's all like, everything from everywhere comes in. We've got like, this is like nut town. This is fruit tree land. And then we've got like berry bushes, and then we've got herbaceous. So everything is just in rows, and then you sort of feel like you're just like pulling inventory to pull the orders up.
So the bare root stock?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
that stuff, he'll dig whatever he wants from there.
Take it out of the soil, put it in here.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't do much in pots. I do a little bit in pots. The hard thing about the nursery flow that we have is that we don't really do any ornamentals. So right off the bat, you don't have what most people want in terms of plants. Right. And we don't sell much stuff in pots, meaning by April, we can't really sell much anymore. So you don't have the stuff that people want, and you don't have any plants when people want to buy plants. So it's kind of a hard, it's a tough sell for a business model. Yeah, exactly. But so I think there's really a place for having some kind of middle ground there. I've gravitated that way because I don't like having to fill pots. You got to have some kind of material, and it always gets weird. You know, there's like the sourcing of the material, the mixing it, and and then you have to water all these little pots because they're always drying out. Whereas in the ground, it's just like, if you can do that, if they can sell, it's the best way for me. We can take a quick look in the greenhouse because we're here. Yeah. We can have figs survive out here. One really good thing, if you're in a colder climate than we are, you can do a lot of people will do like the root cutting and then burying the fig, but you can just do a step over. So like this branch, big branch, you can just bend this down all the way to the ground and just cover that. And then you can actually train this so that this branch just lives like that forever. And then every year you can grow new wood this way, get fruit, and then just have it, you know, if you train the branch to live horizontally 6-8 inches above the ground, then you just need to throw some leaves at it or some straw at it or something, and it'll stay alive in, you know, even in a colder climate. The step over is really good for figs.
Unless you have voles.
Yeah. I've never had voles. I mean, we got voles, but
I've tried this several times for Vermont. Never anything. Nothing.
the whole thing is gone?
Gone. Every bit of it. Yeah.
Is this a heat mask for you right here?
That was the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little microclimate enhancement?
Yeah.
They keep the deer off your land.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, they're here. No, they definitely, if you looked at the chestnuts, a lot of them are pruned and nibbled and whatnot. Figs back here. This is not a heated greenhouse. This is a legacy oil tank. I don't heat in here. No, I roll the sides up, but I roll them down for the winter. I just bury them. It's Stone Age, but yeah. It's actually better than roll-ups. It's more airtight, but it's a pain in the ass.
Right.
I don't have a fan. I open both sides, and in the summer, I just roll them up, and then we're good with whatever.
The Swiss chard here is gigantic. Oh my God. I'll show you what good
Yeah.
soil will do.
Wow, yeah. We've got more fig trees.
Fiber banana from northern Japan, and it's overwintered in here. Like I said, it's not heated, but we do blow in some air into the two layers of the plastic, so it's a little bit insulated that way. But they definitely die back to the ground. Like these I just planted these from little pups that overwintered in here that were this big in the beginning of the season. And then there's like all kinds of stuff, rosemary, yacon, more figs. These are all like hardy. Chicago in this row here. And then these are a few varieties of castor. This is literally from seed this year.
Oh my God.
Absolute beast, behemoth. But they just put on so much biomass, and they can bring soil back to life from like dead, you know, dusty soil. They put in so many exudates. Certain plants, you really have to like learn a little bit about what plants do in the soil in specific. Like all plants put exudates into the soil, but some, when they're pruned, pump so much carbon into the soil, and castor is one of them. So, you know, these ones I'm saving for seed because this is a cool variety. But these ones, they've been pruned like 15 times throughout the season, and every time you prune them back, they re-enter into a vegetative cycle. They put out tons of exudates into the soil because they ask all the mycorrhiza, you know, all the fungi, the bacteria, they need this, they need that for growing a new flush of growth. They put so much energy into the soil in return. And this is just, this Sudan grass is just 2 rows seeded with a little earthway seeder on the carrot disc. And I've cut this 4 times. It grew this high 4 times. And so this is something that I'm really excited about. I've been trying it at the field scale a little bit, but basically growing all the mulch right next to the tree row so that you can sickle bar and then lean that grass right next to the trees as mulch. And, you know, there are some issues potentially with voles and stuff like that for overwintering. But I think, to me, that's, you know, I used to think like roller crimping has to be the way that veggie operations have to go. And now I think potentially like growing, you know, a 2-to-1 ratio of biomass strip to crop strip, cutting and accumulating right in the crop row, I think that's like probably the best option. And it can be done at any scale. I do it with a scythe, I have a walk-behind sickle mower, and then I have a big tractor sickle mower. But all those just cut and drop, so we would need some kind of, ideally, I would like to have the sickle bar in front and a hay rake in the back so that you can cut and then basically make a windrow of hay right next to your tree row on either side.
I wanted to ask about I'm really not very familiar with this plant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it dies back every winter if it's outside, or will it regrow?
This is just an annual.
So that's just an annual plant?
Yeah, that's an annual.
And it did this in 1 year?
Yeah, from a seed.
And so, so if one, how different is this compared to one that would have been outside?
This is definitely bigger by a lot, but they can get, I've got a bunch out there that have been pruned like 8 times and they're still enormous plants.
Yeah.
So they put on a ton of growth. It's a little scary. We have 2 kids and one seed, the coating on the seed contains ricin. It's one of the most toxic substances. So one seed can be fatal. So I cut off, I'm kind of crazy. I cut off all, unless I'm saving the seed, I cut off all the seed stalks everywhere and just mulch them. So it's a little bit, but I don't know. Just figured I'd mention that because it's legit. But they also, the inside of the seed is oil and has all kinds of uses, medicinal and industrial. Yeah. And yeah, that's part of the reason that they have some vole repellent properties, so I like to include them in the tree rows.
How woody are the stems for harvesting? Could they be used for any type of structural purposes?
I don't think structural. No, it feels woody, but it's definitely herbaceous. Yeah, it's not lignified. All right, let's get some fresh air.
Right, it's like a sauna.
Oh, actually, I should mention this other thing over here. So, I don't know if people want to go around the other side. It's kind of crazy to walk through there. But this over here, this is one of my major propagation pieces of infrastructure. It's just a bed of sand, and inside is a network of pipes that mist. And so I do tons of cuttings of all kinds of berries and shrubs. We got sea berry, hardy pomegranate, elderberry, gumi, kiwis, yasta berries, all kinds of stuff, varietal mulberries. And I basically just stick them right in the sand. No rooting hormone, just mist with water. And you know, at this time of year, you can't even pull these things out. They're rooted. And so these can either then get put in a pot and sold, or you could plant them right in the ground, whatever you want to do. But huge amounts of plants in this thing. I mean, when it was full, it probably had at least 2,000 plants. And you can clone all your berry bushes this way. And you don't have to do it with the misting system. You can just do it with a little mini container with a white plastic lid and just mist in there, but just sand. No, this is Miyoga ginger. Zingiber Miyoga. I have it growing outside. I didn't know if it was hardy outside, but it's completely hardy outside for 5 years. But this patch is really nice for my sales.
So you don't use here, so does this get like totally cold?
Totally frozen, yeah. But I have that guy growing outside for 5 years with no special treatment at all. Those are they're the most cold hardy variety. I'm not going to try to grow them here, but I'm going to sell them to somebody down south. So, Fuerte. I think that's one of the 2 or 3 most cold hardy ones that I was able to research. All right, so.
Are you heating this greenhouse?
No.
Because you got bananas in here.
Yeah, they're fiber bananas, so they died at the ground. But
They do. Okay.
yeah,
There's only one layer of poly in here.
there's
right?
2.
Oh, there is 2. Okay.
Yeah. The fans are blowing the air in. Yeah, so that gives it quite a bit of insulation. That basically, for people who are heating, that saves 40% heat. So that's like how insulative they are. You know, and those fans use as much energy as a light bulb. So
Oh, is that right?
yeah, they're tiny.
So it blows air between the layers, right?
Yeah.
And plus it up.
Yep.
Just in the winter.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think that's everything up here. So we could go see the persimmon orchard. Yeah.
Orchard.
Yeah.
The bed prep.
The what?
The bed prep.
The bed prep. Oh yeah, let's do the bed prep first. That's close. Yeah. Here's a big outdoor caster bunch over here. This is another main nursery area, total jungle now. Yeah. This is pretty intense jungle though. Those casters can take, we went down to 26 the other night. I had no idea they could take that much. This is actually an interesting note on bed prep. From right of where I'm standing off to the east here, this whole spot, they made this before I got here. I don't have a whole lot in common with the folks that were here. They left a lot of presents for me in terms of like garbage, just years worth of accumulated garbage. But they also had like heavy equipment, so they bulldozed the garbage like into the earth. It's fucking crazy. This is one of those piles of earth that they made. I guess the grandmother wanted a garden, so they wanted to make a little garden space right next. And they had like rows of barbed wire fence, snow fence, posts, metal T-posts, all contorted with poison ivy, multiflora rose, black locust that were half as tall as these guys, a thicket of ailanthus, sumac.
You mean growing?
All, like this, no, that's what this was before I started here. Literally, barbed wire and poison ivy. Yeah, well, they abandoned it for years. And mugwort. So the question is, how did I get rid of it? And like, you can't even find any ailanthus anymore. And everybody says ailanthus is this terrible, beast plant. Basically, what I did is well, after getting rid of the metal is the worst. I just kept cutting everything and laying it down and making rows and then planting in fast-growing plants. That's it. The only bed prep was just some shovel work, digging a shovel depth with, making a bed by digging with a shovel. And then just planting in super fast-growing plants. These are all Siberian sea peach. And it's amazing that once you get a thick canopy of shade from plants that you want growing, most of all those, you know, the fast growing plants that everybody is always hating on, they don't really regenerate in full shade. They're there because there was a massive disturbance, and they're taking that space, they're taking care of that space. And if you bring a huge strong canopy of fast growing plants over them and you keep cutting them a few times, they fade away. They're no longer there. And I can't even find some of the roots of the ailanthus that were 20 feet tall here. And if you cut them one time in a season, you're just invigorating it. If you cut them 5 times in a season, you're taking it away. You know, and if you cut them 5 times and they're trying to regenerate from the ground under shade, they can't hack it. And for a couple of years, all that, you know, growth, just, it becomes food for these plants. It's the fertilizer. You know, the only thing I brought in here was wood chips and seeds. And yeah, this hillside in particular, I didn't tackle this hillside because this was a huge ailanthus patch here. And I was like, this isn't gonna, I can't do that. And everybody is like, oh, you gotta use chemicals on the ailanthus, and now it's peaches.
It's just not true.
It's just not true.
It's not true?
Yeah, it isn't true.
Right.
These peach trees are 4 years old.
Really?
These are 4-year-old from seed. From seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in 10 years, they'll cut them and start again.
In fact,
12.
yeah, in fact, I'm probably going to cut them pretty hard this year. I did some pruning last year, but you know, the amount of mulch that they're leaving now is actually amazing. But you don't want to let them grow so long without cutting them at all, because if you don't get, you have to maintain some live buds low down. If I wanted to rejuvenate these, I could cut them down here and just leave these stems, and you know, 2 years after that, I'd be getting lots of fruit.
I'm going to jump in and say, if that's 4 years old, see, all I do is grind it for 10 years and start to look like shit. I whack them to the ground and plant another one.
Yeah.
Right there, or whatever, you know what I'm saying, you know, they move around and boom, 4 years later you got this. And you know, that's, you can get 100 to 200 peaches off of each of these trees in a good year.
Yeah.
Yeah, peaches have a tendency to just fizzle out and
These are kind of fizzling out, these two right here. But you can bring a lot of vigor back into them by a hard prune, even while they're alive. But you'll just see, you know, one thing for people who haven't gotten their eye into this yet is super key plant physiology is to know how old wood is. So like, you know, this leaf just grew, this whole branch just grew, and you trace it back to where it's at the, you know, at a larger stem, and you need to be able to look and see the bud scars and say, okay, this is 1 year, this is where it transitions to last year's wood, this was grown in 22, and backwards.
Here's 1 year. Where my finger here is 1 year. Chinese chestnut.
And with peaches, in an older tree, that 1 year wood will be like 2 inches long and super thin. And in a vigorous one, you'll have shoots that are 4, 5, 6 feet long. So that's what you want. Like you need to, with peaches, you have to maintain, well, all fruiting plants, you have to maintain a balance between the energy that goes towards fruiting and senescence and the energy that goes to vigorous growth. You can't just have, if you just let it fruit forever, it'll decline. Great example of that is this mulberry over here. Everyone has their own way that they need to be pruned, but all plants have that. They all have life cycles.
Well, it's like a hayfield. Everyone's trying to maintain that hayfield at adolescent vigor.
Yeah.
They grow it till it's adult, you know, 25 years old, 20 years old, cut it, let it grow back. Cut it, let it grow back. You maintain that shit at adolescent vigor. It's the most vigorous time for the plant, whatever that plant might be.
Yep.
If you're trying to, you know, have this kind of rapid turnover and growth. And
right, and the most fruit. You know? So like this tree, it gets pruned heavily every year. These came just up, this came this year. This is just from right here, all the way up. But this one, you can see it's a little bit thicker and it's got these stubby little things. I'll probably prune this one off. So you basically, every plant for fruit, more or less, the older, it's a different timeline, but the older wood, you need to remove some percentage of the older wood and let new wood come in and fill it. So with peaches, this is not. This is a seedling that it was sold to me as Morris nigra seed, but I don't think it can be Morris nigra. I think it's rubra. But it's a great individual, and
Makes fruit.
it makes wonderful fruit. Yeah, huge, super goober, sweet fruit. We eat off this thing for like 2 months every year.
Eric, could you comment on what we can do to see more mulberry available in local food systems?
That's a great question. I think one of the big challenges is just the massive perishability. It's like more perishable than raspberries. So, fresh fruit would be tough commercially, but I think any kind of syrup or concentrates, like, why not? Because you can just, they could do mechanized shake harvesting and harvest it, just like they do for the cherry fruit industry and all that kind of thing. But I can't for the life of me understand why more people don't do that, and especially even just homeowners gardening. Like, forget about apples, at least down in the swamp that we live in, the Hudson Valley. It's like first tree should be persimmons and mulberries and pawpaws, because you'll actually get fruit. Peaches. But yeah, so all the trees have their cycle. Remove the older wood. With peaches, they only fruit on last year's wood. No other wood gets fruit on them. So, with apples, you can get fruit buds on the same piece of wood for 8 years, 10 years. 7 is the best. So, each one has their own life cycle of each piece of fruiting wood.
What wood is mulberry fruit on?
I don't know.
Current year's wood.
Current year's wood.
1 year as it's growing
Boom.
in fruits. It's like only 2, cinnamon and mulberry.
Right, and figs, right, they do that.
Well, figs,
Yeah,
can't even count.
but they're related to figs. They're super close. And the mulberries are one of the oldest relationships with humans as far as fruit trees, out of all of them. So
They're doing all kinds of zones too.
yeah.
Over there in the tropics.
Yep. Yeah, there's lots of species. Yeah, so we'll keep talking about bed prep in the theme here. Yeah, man, I'm so glad. Oh, really? Right on. So this spot was another zone where I removed some garbage and planted some rows of trees. And the basic pattern that I work with is I don't just want, have to do maintenance here to service these. I want everything to grow fast so that it all helps itself. So the grass, I'm trying to seed more fast growing. Right now there's a lot of orchard grass. I'm trying to establish switchgrass in here. I've even planted some miscanthus. This gets cut with a scythe and laid down here, probably 4 or 5 times a year. And all of that is the fertility for the trees. So whether it's a small scale with a scythe or a big scale, that is the pattern that I like, of growing tons of biomass here and feeding it to the plants that you want. Also makes the management super easy. This is a row that I just put in the spring. And so I opened one little, and this is just straight up planting. This is what I did starting with this ground. I trenched a little bit with the shovel, not even trenched. I put the shovel in and rock it, right? That's it. So you're just kind of putting it in and loosening the soil a little bit. I'm not killing any weeds yet. And then I put in 1 wheelbarrow of compost on this whole line. So really not that much, but it's probably about that thick, but that wide. So 1 little line, and I only did that here because this is ledge, it's just bedrock. We're like 2 inches to bedrock here. So loosen the soil, put a little compost on, and then that line, I plant it crazy densely. So I put in castor, I put in tithonia, and then there's catalpa, there's amorpha, there's senna, there's chestnut seed, all this stuff's directly from seed. Chestnut, hazelnut, pawpaw, peach, cherry, persimmons. So all of that stuff is in here, and now you have the potential to let it go any which way it wants. So you know something will grow here. You could plant 2 trees here, but you don't know if they'll get some weird disease or you'll run them over with the lawnmower. And what the linear planting does is, these are spaced roughly so that I can scythe half of this material, and my stroke ends, I walk down onto the right side of the tree row and my stroke ends here. So because everything is planted in a line, the scything is super easy. You're just making one pass with the scythe and you leave all the material right there. So you cut it 3 or 4 times, and now I'm just like waiting for the grass to grow and have a ton of material. It's not something I hate managing. I'm like, sweet, putting all these heaps of fertility right on there. And basically with the density and the sides being mulched all the time, the weeds are not a problem, basically. And that, like I said, I didn't do anything to chop up the perennial grasses, whatever. You just covered them a little bit and then mulched up to the sides and have a strong shade plant growing the first year. You know, these are all frosted now, but these plants grow fast. You know, Tithonia, these were cut back like 5 times during the season, just quick, and just drop the material. Tithonia? Yeah. Tithonia and castor are probably the two, like, some of the best lead plants to start a system with because of the speed that they grow, the amount of exudates they put in, and Tithonia in particular changes phosphorus and potassium into available forms at an incredible rate, more than a lot of other plants. So that's one way of establishing rows with very, you know, not much management per row foot or whatever you want to say. And very amenable to hand scale. It's a shagbark. Yeah. It's funny, that one, it's just in growing straight out of the rock. So it always loses its leaves before anything else. Oh yeah, that's junk pile number like out of 20. Crazy. They would have all maybe, but not. I'm using that as my interim junk pile. I escaped. All the high value grafted. So I'm gonna about 1,000 trees in here, maybe less. So I measured it out, so roughly 3 rows in each bed, and I'm gonna have a fence, and this is gonna be like high value zone for.
It's gonna be a fence?
Yeah, I'm gonna bring a fence off like that to protect from deer, because deer are pretty intense down here. And if I'm gonna go through the trouble of grafting, there's a lot of steps involved. I'm sure you talked about. You didn't get that far? Buzz is the wizard of grafting. One of the best that we know of. I mean, he's like, there's plenty of people that maybe know more than you that are like in industrial world, right? But as far as like, you know, just being able to graft anything, it seems like, I don't know many people that have better success rate than Buzz. So I actually consulted with Buzz, and he didn't even allow me to pay him. So we gotta figure out something. We'll get you some pawpaws. Persimmon, yeah. If you can take those and ripen, you can have one. Yeah. Anyway, super important to learn from people who really know what they're doing, because you can go online. God forbid, don't go online. But even with books, it's like every book has 15 different techniques and whatever. So, and I still, you know, we're gonna need to talk again because it's still too complicated. So that's a path, that's a path, that's a path, that's a path. And if you do that and you keep the top mulched and you do some, some defense on perennial weeds coming in, you basically, especially if you're digging trees every year or two, which you can weed as you dig, get any like mugwort, whatever that's coming in. That's all you have to do. And then, there's not gonna, I did grow a cover crop in here. This was Sudan grass this year. So it had a nice, pulse of growth into the soil. But yeah, it's super heavy duty. But, if you're gonna do a garden at home or start a nursery, the amount of stuff that I've dug with my body is just like, I'm 40 now and I don't want to do that much forever,
Yeah.
And we have 2 kids. We have a
Prime of life. Come on.
we have a
Exactly. He wants to stay prime.
yeah. I want to stay
He
prime.
wants to be digging at 68 and feeling good instead
Yeah.
of like hobbling around on bad knees.
Yeah, I want to dig a little bit,
Yeah, exactly.
I have to dig all those plants up by hand, and that's kind of enough. I don't need to do the bed prep as well. And I've been working on this for a total all in of maybe like 3 hours so far, which is pretty good.
So just a question.
Yeah.
Did you set it up so that your paths match your excavator? There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm straddling that bed right now.
Perfectly straddling it, yeah.
And this way, if I wanted to, I don't imagine I would need to, for digging the plants out, if I were to let plants grow 2 or 3 years in here and they were to get really big, like hickory or something like that, I would have the option of digging them out with the machine. But I would think with the level of like loosening that's happened here, it should be not too bad. But to keep that looseness, I will need to re-up on the wood chips every few years. You can't loosen soil and then have the soil exposed to the sun and air and expect it to stay loose. You'll lose all that decompaction work that you did. The rain compacts it, the sun bakes it, that's killing all that work that you did. So
unless you're digging that same depth when you dig out every 2 years, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
That is one caveat.
Yeah.
For ease of bed prep, if you have a 2-year rotation, even 3, that 24-inch tillage to dig out those plants that are this tall, you re-dig in the bed every time as you go down the bed, and so it maintains itself. You mulch the pathways.
Yep.
I don't mulch the beds.
Right.
We weed them once a year until they're 2. Well, the first year we 1 year, once, and I'm really experimenting now with how much weeds can I leave in the bed and still get the crop of trees without ever touching them.
Yeah.
My current experimentation, like how much can we love weeds?
Yeah.
And use them in our. What if it takes a little longer? Isn't that okay if you never have to weed?
Yep.
So.
And I would say too that like this is not how I do planting out in the wild. This is not how I would plant an orchard. This is like for me. Yeah. This is a production space, intensive production for trees, but also for our home economics. Like this is our livelihood. So I don't feel like this is very permaculture in a lot of ways, right? Like I'm using a big machine and making a huge disturbance, but it's a one-time investment. This is like a piece of infrastructure for me. Like this is like building a house, kind of like this is going to be a real generator of income. I can put 1,000 high-value trees in here every year.
Hey, would you guys talk about any projects you're working on right now that you'd be excited to share with folks about?
Yeah, totally. So we should go out and see some of the fields. That's where some of the projects are.
Since this is Permaculture Living Lands Trust, if you could talk about the land tenure of this area,
Yeah.
your own land and your neighbors.
So we own land, and my parents are actually building a house up there soon, right at the part of the property. Owned and going to. They have My dream has been for a long time of flat out sell them a piece of it. This is a black. This is den and muck. Yeah. It's right at the end of this field. So all of these runs of cattails, that's not Black Creek, it's a little tributary to Black Creek. Yep. So all these runs of cattails are surface drainage ditches, and the soil here, if you want to call it that, is 60+% organic matter. You know, just to come and look at. Yeah, so
Seems like it's
yeah.
mostly a black dirt.
It is.
It's hard to manage to get a wet season?
Yes, yes.
And is that every season or like?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a little test plot over there where I've tried a lot of different trees because this coming spring we're going to do some of our the biggest perennial plantings out here that we've done. I have 300 blueberry plants and they've been doing okay, but hickories have done really well. I wanted to get Caria aquatica, that's why I was asking, have it as a rootstock. But so we've been growing vegetables down here because in wet years this can be super gnarly and we can lose a lot of stuff. So all these fields up until that corn, some years we had all of these filled with vegetables. And this year we actually did about 6 fields of this special leek for some company. And these are the remains. But we're also doing some corn for tortillas because, you know, I always want to grow like staple crops. I want to have staple crops make sense, which is really hard because, you know, growing potatoes, tough to make any money. Staple crops are the ones that are staples because they're so easy to mechanize, right, in a lot of ways. So, yeah. So, actually, you know Joe, right? Joe, yeah. So Joe Boson, he has a company called Also's Tortilleria, and we're going to be bringing the corn up, and he's going to make tortillas, and so we're going to sell organic tortillas to restaurants and stuff like that. So, definitely a huge change of pace from, you know, the high octane veggie farm. But we figured when we had our second child, we didn't really want to be going to the farmers markets twice a week. We did that for, you know, 9 years, and I'm kind of
as a seller.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a lot of commitment.
Yeah, and you know, it's just a lot of work. I mean, we had 4 or 5 people working full time most years, and it's a lot. Yeah. 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 I put those up the past couple of years.
Let me ask a prompter question here. Can I get everyone? Thanks. So Buzz is going to have to go soon.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I'd love for folks to hear from you guys, what I was asking to articulate a little more clearly about projects. What I would love for you to both share is just a few minutes for folks about what are things that you consulted on, advised on, installed, things that are off campus, aren't your own operation, but that you're being resourced by and asked to give input on because of a lot of expertise and skills in effect that you cultivated at your own operation. Does that make sense? Just
Yeah.
to share whatever you can, whatever
Totally.
you're...
So one thing I've been working on, we'll start with one. The Farm Hub is, it's an interesting organization over in Hurley. It was formerly the Gill Corn Farm, and bought by, I think it's under the New World Foundation now, Jeffrey Buffett, basically. So they bought the farm, and they are trying to do regenerative practices on like 1,000 acres of silt loam. And they finally, I suggested to them when they started, what about trees? Like, you guys are gonna, you guys can kind of do whatever you want, right? Like, why not have some perennial agriculture? And they weren't interested. And then in the past couple of years, a guy started working there who was super interested in trees, and he was able to pitch it to the management, and they want to do it. So I've been helping them think through crop species and planting strategies on like pretty big scale plantings. So they've put in like yellow bud hickory for oil. That's a species of hickory that you can't eat the nut, but you can press the oil, and it can be more productive than olive oil. We don't have to bring in, olive oil from across the world. We can produce our own oil here from plants. And so, yeah, that's a really cool project that I'm excited to be working with.
Cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have very different ways that we're generating money for our farm. So my biggest thing is internet sales. So it's not large projects. There are some I'll get to in a moment, but mostly, I'm interfacing with hundreds, if not thousands, of small scale growers who are trying to get going and want to know, what shall I grow here? How do I do it? And of course, my specialty, because I'm zone 4B, historically, is that cold, the cold crop. What can we grow in that colder region and still expect to have crops? And then, of course, I'm doing zone pushing.
Mm-hmm.
And so my projects are internal. My big projects is, persimmon hardiness project, trials and project, and then, chestnut species evaluation for cold climate, along with hickory and pecan and many other crops too. I do consult with a bunch of people who want to plant larger numbers of trees, anywhere from a couple hundred to 1,000 or more. And so that's like, what zone are you? What are your goals? What are you going to do with these trees? When do you want them to bear? How long do you want this form, that form, timber form, dwarves, whatever?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm involved with a lot of people that are trying to figure out what seedlings and or grafted trees they should go. I'm also involved with people that are trying to say, I want to end up with grafted trees. How do I do it? What's the easiest way? And how do we get that done with the least amount of effort? Because as Erik started out saying, it's like, $40, $50, $60, $70 a piece is an awful lot of money for a plant that you can produce for far, far less than that if you understand fundamentals of propagation and you learn how to graft in a different style, what we call top working. It's so much easier. So I'm working with a bunch of people on those kind of projects that are longer term. I've consulted with a bunch of people that have wanted to grow big chestnut farms, especially lately, and then we talk about the economics of it. I share what I know and share some of the spreadsheets, and they're like, I think I'm going to skip this. Because, it's, unless you're really driven to tree crops, or you have other goals in your organization that want to preserve land and have it be a community asset, you might not take that on as a business person. And there are some, of course, extenuating circumstances to that. People that have a ton of money are often looking for a place to put it where they'll have tons of write-offs and not make any more money and get tax breaks because of what they're doing, and money back from the NRCS or whoever,
right?
Because this stuff's available.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool time to be doing this work.
It is.
It really is. There's a lot happening.
What's the profitability model like? I'm probably just playing around with stuff, but there could be a time when I actually need some money.
Well, scalability is what you have to look at, right? Because the models we have are at different scale, and the ones that's most readily available and the most work has been done in larger scale. Small scale is completely different.
When people are really creative with marketing, the sky's the limit, right? But as far as like, the spreadsheets that you share are probably about like commodity chestnuts, right? To a certain extent.
To a certain extent. Well, I wouldn't call it commodity yet in this country, but what it is the scale is that, you're planting out, 10 or 20 or 30 acres.
Right.
So that's not quite commodity scale, but
Yeah.
it's still a lot to manage, and you have to have a bunch of skills to do that and a bunch of money to get started.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking small scale, few acres, small holdings. You start looking at the kind of productivity you can get out of a small piece of land. You grow thousands of trees in that one bed. His grafting bed that he's doing.
Starts, yeah.
He can put 1,000 grafts in that bed, grow them all for 2 years, sell them all for $60, $70, hopefully. Or if not, guess what? They're right here. He's selling scion wood, he's selling nuts down the road. So, we have multiple avenues. And we're very maneuverable at small scale, and we lose that maneuverability as we get larger, and we have to generate certain amounts of money. It becomes a real constriction in how we have to think and plan. So you guys have to decide that for yourselves, where you want to fall in this, how you want to make your money, who do you want to talk to, internet, retail, farmers market, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I think.
Wholesale.
I want to give you guys a round of applause and say thanks so much for today. Seriously. Seriously, accelerating people's learning curve in a big way.
If we want to quick, we can walk up and just see the persimmons. I don't know. Yeah, cool. Yeah, dude.
Dude, you gotta come to the farm.
I want to so bad.
It's like this.
Yeah?
But it's different soil.
But like wet, like heavier.
It's cabot silt loam
Okay.
and blue clay.
Yeah.
But no root.
Right. I keep thinking, I went pretty berry propagation this year. I could actually plant out like a couple of these fields,
I start
I think they're gonna love this.
planting berry.
Right.
Right next to then grow on it. Growing.
The one wasn't quite strong enough. all these were just from, or this one was from this year of one that looked completely dead. This is Sophie's gift. I'm pretty psyched about that one. And they look super weird for the first couple of years, as you can see. You're just like, how is this going to work out? But so now I'm going to leave these two on, and these are going to merge under the bark. They're already starting to merge. And so instead of cutting this one off, I'm going to let this one grow for another year, and then once they merge, it'll make the connection much stronger, and then I'll cut off that.
Plant faster.
Yeah.
Right, so you favor the one you want, but let it continue to grow, and they all grow together. And as soon as they all grow together, then you cut off the ones that you don't want.
And these here, these are suckers. I came through and removed suckers once. I probably should have done another time, but if you don't touch these at all in the season, this would have grown a little bit and this would have been huge. So you need to cut these off sometimes. You just want to remove
that forces the growth into these.
Yes.
Right? Nothing, nowhere else to grow.
Yeah.
So spring is our propagation skill training, so we'll get into more detail
Yeah.
on that.
Cool.
Spring.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Anything
So
else you want to tell us out here about what you're doing?
So cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think now the transition that I'm making now in this area is I spaced the trees here according to a phone call with Jerry Lehman, who is one of the late persimmon experts in North America. And for my liking, they're pretty far from each other. So what I want to do now is try to have a layer of nut-bearing trees. Everything is going to be pruned, but the nut trees are going to go up and hopefully be able to drop a crop of nuts here as well as the persimmons, because I think there's too much space, and when you have a lot of open space, you have to maintain it because you got a lot of growth, you got grass. I would like a little bit, not a closed canopy forest, but I want, I don't want much direct light hitting the ground anymore. I want to dim down the undergrowth and catch more of it with trees. So I'm going to train the chestnuts to grow kind of straight up and maybe have some lateral branches in between the rows.
And plant timber for them, right?
Yeah. And keep pruning them a little bit. So yeah, I just want to try to develop a couple more layers here, because we basically, if you just plant an orchard of persimmons, I kind of got the message this year that it doesn't matter what species you have, a monoculture of plants just doesn't work ever for a long period of time. Like in here, I noticed that I was getting some diseases on, 11 years in, we got some diseases, some leaves were falling, and we didn't have very good yields this year. And the trees, if you go and look at the amount of growth that they put on this year versus the last year, it had declined. So I was like, you never really fully understand how degraded our soils are. This was a field that they grew lettuce in for 2 generations of people, and it was blasted. There's no life in the soil. It's pretty hard. It's actually pretty compact. So then I wanted to plant in a lot more diversity, bring in all different kinds of roots, and have at least 3 layers where I've got the persimmons, hopefully nuts above that, and then some lower fruit down here at this level.
And if that doesn't work out, what would you do? Just rip whatever out. You rip out whatever's not working, right?
Yeah.
Start over.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, not
when you
start
have
over. It's not over. It's a continuum, right?
Yeah,
This didn't work, so
selection.
now we're going to do this. Oh, here's a better idea. Oh, look, these persimmons are now 3 times as big as when I planted the chestnuts, and look how well they're doing with whatever else I have in here. Because he's not done trying other things in this planting. Look at the black locust.
Yeah, once you have a row that has this much diversity in it, something's going to work, something's going to go well and something won't. What I'm doing now here is I've been clearing out around there to favor the hickory, the mulberry, and I'm going to try. This is a very hard hill because it's a very uneven, super rocky, filled with mugwort. I've planted a lot of stuff into it and it's very hard to maintain.
It looks like they might have dumped refuse piles there.
This one is actually, there's not too much garbage.
Yeah, no, what I mean is like push.
Oh, it's actually just ledge. It's actually, yeah, there's an actual, it's a landform, but it's super thin on rock. It's amazing that no soil up there. There's just a rock and some mugwort. Look how happy the mulberry is. Everything can grow. You just need to find the right thing that will work there. So I'm trying to plant some more stuff over there. But Yeah.
To your point. Question here, that grass on that tree, how old is that grass?
How old?
Is that 2 years?
2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. Stop working.
Yeah. Yeah, this here. That one.
So keep the root system alive.
Yeah.
Those are pawpaws.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen? I'm doing the same thing. When you come, you're like, oh, this is so familiar.
Yeah, I mean now I kind of like regret not having planted 2 or 5, 15 trees in between each one. But it's sure easier if you do it from the beginning, I will say. And just to finish the thought on that high density planting, the idea is that you're mimicking natural succession. Ecological succession starts with pioneer species, and then you get more exigent species until you reach some kind of mythical climax, right? And if we just plant early succession fruit tree and just hopefully keep it there forever, nature is going to say no to that plant because that's not
That's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
The program has developed for millions of years.
It might work for a little while, but it will stop working. And then you're going to have to start fighting pests, and you're going to have to start bringing in fertility. So we need to plant full, ecologically functional consortia so that we have the ability to work with natural succession.